Welcome, guys, to episode 9 of the Overtime Show. Once again, I'm joined by Sky Sports NFL analyst Coach Reinebold. How you doing, Coach?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. So today,
You're
guys,
rocking that Seahawk attire. I see that.
Yeah, I had to hide it for a week, and now that the Rams lost, it's back out again. Because I did see. I don't know if you saw. Did you see Jamal Adams coming after Jalen Ramsey on Twitter last night?
No, what happened? That's going to be interesting.
He posted a picture of Jalen Ramsey saying, "Get yourselves down to Cabo now, but this time bring your own damn cigars." So he's going after him. But so this week, guys, we're covering the divisional round games that happened and looking forward to the championship games. So first question, Jeff, did you enjoy all 4 games?
Yeah, I really did. I mean, I had really a bunch of emotions over the course of the weekend because, I actually had 3 of my ex-SMU receivers playing this weekend. And Garrett Dieter was activated for the Chiefs. And then you had Emmanuel, then you had Cole Beasley. And, especially when you spend time with those guys like you do, and then you recognize that for every kid that ever played the game, I think, to get to a Super Bowl is such an incredible feat. And Emmanuel had the opportunity to be the first player in NFL history to play with 4 different teams in the Super Bowl. Cole's never been there. Garrett was there last year with the Chiefs, has a chance to go back and do it again. So, I found myself really pulling for those guys, and it was watching Breeze go through what he went through, and then seeing the elation on the side of the Bills and the relief on the side of the Chiefs.
Yeah, you almost got a proud dad feeling there. So I get you got like a proud dad feeling, those guys balling out this weekend. But
because there's just so much history that you shared with them, right? I mean, we came into SMU. Emmanuel was there going into his sophomore year. Cole was one of the first kids we recruited. Garrett was my last recruit at SMU, and so to watch those guys now grow into being NFL players, and it's really a cool moment. And when you're in the business and you recognize the enormity of what this means to them, it's just it's a cool deal.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get talking about Cole Beasley because he's been a real important part of that Bills offense. But we'll start ourselves with Saturday night. We had the Rams taking on the Packers. The Packers winning 32-18. Aaron Rodgers 23 from 36 for 2 touchdowns on 296 yards. Before this game, the build-up was Jalen Ramsey versus Davante Adams. That was the big build-up. From the previous week, we had Metcalf versus Ramsey. A lot of people that I listened to in the previous week were saying that Davante Adams is going to be a different cat compared to DK Metcalf. He's a little leaner, a lot more slithery, a bit more precise with the route running, can get in and out of stops a lot quicker. And he was going to be a bit more of a problem for Jalen Ramsey. On that first touch, and I actually want to know, when Ramsey was clearly going man-to-man with Davante, was that Ramsey's fault that Davante was just wide open, or was there a missed assignment on the other side once Davante cuts back across the line of scrimmage?
Well, I think you got to give the Packers a lot of credit on that one because, they recognized that Ramsey was going to be on Davante one-on-one. And what they did, it was really, I mean, if I could break that play down for you, it was a phenomenal play because they sent in a running play, but with a motion attached to it, and then put it on Rodgers to make the decision about whether to hand it off or throw it. And this is where Rodgers is just so far in front of everybody. I said in the broadcast, it's his world. We're all just living in it, and that's really the way it is because he saw, they took Davante from this side over to the left side. Then they brought him back in real, like what we call wham motion. And when he saw that Davante was on the back side of him, he made the decision that he was going to pull it and make the throw. And I don't know if you noticed the reaction that Jalen had at the end of the play. The other corner just got locked up in man and he was so intent on his man, job that as Davante came back, they should have bumped that off and let the other guy step outside and take Devontae, and then Jalen, but he got picked. He couldn't get through. And so it was a combination of, great design by the Packers, tremendous awareness by the quarterback to recognize what's happening, and then a lack of communication on the part of the Rams. And I'm going to tell you something. I really thought that the Packers really did an amazing job of formations and personnel groups and how they use tempo and all that stuff to just put the Rams defense in a position where they were just ineffective. They had no chance of stopping them, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, the big matchup was Davante Adams against Jalen Ramsey, but the likes of Allen Lazard, 4 catches of 96 yards, 1 touchdown. Aaron Jones, nearly getting 100 yards off scrimmage again. I mean, I think the narrative when they picked Jordan Love in the summer, everyone was going to say about how Aaron Rodgers ran out of love. He was the trust had been broken between him and upstairs. But him and Matt LaFleur have formed a really trusting connection, and I think Rodgers trusts what LaFleur is doing on both sides of the ball. And it just feels that the Packers they feel complete. They just don't feel like they've got a hole really anywhere. And, I didn't think the Rams were that bad on offense. I thought the Packers were just really good on defense against, Jared Goff, who didn't have a bad night. Just not a great one, but not a bad one.
Well, you hit on something, Jeremy, that I think is really important. I think that a lot of people don't recognize. I really believe that, every message has a shelf life. And so I think with Mike McCarthy, I think Rodgers had gotten to the point where he was actually kind of bored with the offense. They were very much like, and this is not a criticism, it's just an observation, right? Mike does things a certain way. They're not going to use a lot of motion. They're not going to give you a bunch of formation, none of that stuff. And then LaFleur came in, and, Rodgers is a prideful guy, and he's very, very smart. And I think there was a point in time, and it's just same thing happened with Brady and BA. It takes time for them to find out, there's a little bit of bumping into one another until they figure out, what's what. But I think there's a real respect between LaFleur and Rodgers and LaFleur in terms of their football IQ and what they're trying to get done. You talked about the throw to Lazard. Okay, now I wanted to really, it's so tough on TV because you don't have time. But I wanted to show the fans what the genius of that play, because the Packers came in with 2 tight ends, which is not a personnel group that they use a great deal. And so Staley countered by bringing in an extra defensive lineman, basically playing goal line defense. And the corner got criticism for giving up the big play, but the corner actually played it correctly. Johnson, the safety, never got to the middle where he was supposed to because he didn't know how to line up to the formation. You watch the play, and there's a lot of confusion on the Rams' part. And Sean and I were talking about it on the couch. One thing for sure when you play man free is there better be somebody in the middle of the field. And if you noticed, as he's underneath center, Rodgers goes like this and he points at Lazard, right? Because he saw it too. And Lazard took the post and he threw a perfect throw. So one of the things that Rodgers doesn't get enough credit for, in my opinion, is what he's able to see on the field that even analysts and guys that have played the game and all that stuff in the booth can't point out, right? Because that was all Aaron Rodgers seeing the defense. The defense was in panic mode. They didn't line up right. And the corner who like I said, got vilified on the play, he was right. He was the only one right on defense. And that's the, when you play against a quarterback who has that kind of knowledge of football and that kind of football IQ, you can't make mistakes because he's good enough to beat you. And let me say this. Breeze and Brady have that same knowledge. They have that same ability. when you watched Breeze last night, what you could see was he doesn't have the arm anymore to execute what he sees.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get on to Drew Brees later. Just switching across to the Rams side of it, there's been a lot of talk about Jared Goff and John Wolford and moving forward. I thought when the Rams went up tempo, I thought that's when they looked really dangerous, when they had the Packers back on the back foot, and then they came out in the second half and they just didn't go up tempo. I thought that drive before halftime was like, they figured this out, go a little bit faster, get the Packers on their back foot, and that's where I think Goff's at his best. They went back just slow tempo offense again second half, completely grounded to a halt. Do you think they'll keep Goff in the future? I know that cap hit, he is a massive cap hit, but do you think they will keep Jared Goff going on?
Well, you know, like you said, it's a huge cap hit now. I mean, every team has to now go into this that's not playing, and the Saints are dealing with this because they're $99 million over the cap projected, right? So every one of these teams that gets knocked out has to go in now and say, okay, where are we at? Where we got it? What do we need to do to go forward? Who can help us win? Who do we have to pay? Who do we, you know, where can we cut and all that stuff? And Goff's going to be underneath the microscope. And I think, Jeremy, what did Sean McVay say in the post-game press conference? He's our quarterback for now. That's not a ringing endorsement of where you want to go. And that's not a criticism either. Sean was being very honest about the situation. They have to make a decision about what they're going to do going forward as a football team, because he's been in 3 playoffs, I think, in 4 years. He's been to the Super Bowl once. But just like the Saints, and you got to look at it, just like the Ravens, you got to look at it and go, what do we need to do to get over the hump? You know, what do we got to do? And quarterback is a question. I agree with you in terms of the tempo thing, because early in the game, they, you know, when you're watching the strategic part, it's so hard to sit on the couch and watch it and not be able to express it. But both teams are doing a great job of mitigating substitutions, right? So whether it was Rodgers or whether it was somebody else in the huddle, when they would see the Rams trying to make a substitution, they'd go right now to the line of scrimmage and have a play call, right? I'm sure they worked on it during the week because they caught them in 12 men on the field, right? So the Rams were doing the same thing because Pettin really likes to play nickel and dime. He likes to play small with extra DBs. He knew he couldn't do it against the run, so he played 5 big guys. And then a couple times the Rams, in the first half, caught him trying to get back to their dime substitution, and they couldn't do it. But I'm with you. I don't understand why they changed the narrative in the second half, because they got much cleaner looks for the quarterback when they were in no huddle. You know, you knew what personnel group was on the field, and you know, it's just one of those things that I'm sure Sean and his staff will look at as they evaluate the game and go forward into the offseason.
Yeah, I think that's one to watch out for in the summer, is if they can move off Jared Goff and get an upgrade, I think they might try and do it. But then switching over to the Ravens against the Bills beating the Ravens 17 points to 3. It was billed up as this big high offense, high octane matchup, and quite frequently we're let down by duds. But looking at this one, I mean, I'll go with Lamar first. That's obviously the big narrative, is he's 1-3 in the playoffs now. His performance does seem to dip. Does this offense have to change for Lamar to really grow and become a franchise playoff quarterback? Because we always said it, if you can stop the Ravens from getting 200 yards rushing and they only got 150, you're probably going to beat them. So does this offense have to become more dynamic and a little bit more pass-centric than what it has been so far to advance?
Well, you know, that's a big question, you know, and we could debate this for an hour, but, you know, this is the reality as I see it. When has a quarterback like Lamar won a Super Bowl?
None.
Never. Because you can say, well, Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson is a much more accomplished passer from the pocket than Lamar is. Now, and that's not a criticism of Lamar. That's an observation about what the Ravens have given him, right?
Yeah.
So it's really difficult in football because of time restraints in practice and a lot of reasons that most fans could only guess about because you don't know how it works, right? And that's not, again, same thing. It's like, how could you know unless you've been there? You can't serve two masters to do all of the things that they do offensively in the run game. All the pulling, all the insertions with the fullback, all the motions, all the reads, that takes a lot of time. Just like if you're going to be a drop back team and you're going to run and shoot, you better commit yourself 100% to it, because if you try and do that and run the gap scheme and because they're because they're great football plays, but what you end up with is diluted. Now, Baltimore has sold out to be able to be that team, to run the ball, control the tempo, yada, yada, yada. The problem with that is, if that's not available to you, what do you have to fall back on? So you fall back on not a sophisticated or developed passing attack. You fall back on basically Lamar Jackson's athletic ability to either make a great play scrambling around, or because he has a big arm and he's not accurate, but you hope that he and Andrews will hook up, or he and Hollywood Brown will hook up. Here's the reality. Who do they have other than those two guys if they have to throw the ball?
Yeah, there's
right?
not much.
And Andrews is a good, solid tight end. He's not Travis Kelce, right? So then you take Hollywood Brown, who's a smallish speed receiver, and there's no other threat. So if you get him to third down, you get exactly what Leslie Frazier got. He said, I got to take one guy out, so I'm going to add another guy to the rush, which gives me another guy and a more athletic guy going after the quarterback. We'll keep him in the pocket. We'll make him uncomfortable in there. And it's exactly what happened. I mean, this is what's fascinating to me, Jeremy. Nobody's talking about the job that Leslie Frazier did in that game, right?
Yeah.
That was a masterful defensive performance by a defense that everybody, me included, said, I don't know if they can hold up to the run. But Baltimore ran the ball on the perimeter where Buffalo had a chance instead of running up inside on the small linebackers. And, they got out-coached. I mean, I can't say it any clearer. Baltimore got out-coached in the game.
Yeah, me and Mitch were sort of thinking of that coaching matchup because we haven't seen Sean McDermott as a head coach in this sort of situation. So we thought the expertise of Harbaugh and all that would play into this game, but it was complete roles reversed. Harbaugh looked like it was his first time coaching at this level. They didn't make adjustments, as you were saying. But just on the interception Lamar threw, when I was watching the coverage, I thought, I don't see anybody, apart from Andrews, I don't see anybody near where the pick was. And I had to slow it right down because I thought, is there a guy sitting in the Bills logo in like a white jersey? Is that where he is? And I slowed it right down frame by frame. I'm like, there's nobody there. There's one guy. It looks like double coverage. It looks like he threw it far too early. And it's a case of going, this is same again with Lamar Jackson. He's not accurate. And he looked a little bit off, a little bit unsettled by the rush, which, as you're saying, is a great job what Leslie Frazier's done. And I don't know, I just watched Lamar in playoffs and I just get the feeling if you can't pass the ball accurately, you're not going to get very far against some of these guys.
Well, here's what people have done to him now, and they figured it out, right? Because when they first brought this to the league, it was like the answer was the typical NFL answer, which is, okay, add another guy to the box to stop the run, which puts you in man-to-man coverage. Well, it's much easier to say, okay, I'm going to look at that guy, and if he's open, I'm throwing it there, right? And there's no second read and none of it, right? So then people figured out last year, get him play zone. And the reason they played zone initially was because they didn't want to lose vision on him. So if he scrambled around, you'd be locked up in man and he'd scramble and make a big play. Which man-to-man is usually better against quarterbacks who aren't real accurate, right? But then they went to zone and they figured out, number one, he can't read it, or he struggles to read it. Two, he's young, he's so young at the position that there's no ability to look defenders off or any of that other stuff. And the play you're talking about, where Deron Johnson made that pick, Deron Johnson's the slot dropper, right? And his role is just read the quarterback's eyes. And when you look at that play, Lamar Jackson was looking down the middle the entire time. And so all Deron did was just slough off inside to his eyes, and when he threw the ball, he went and got it. That's what I'm talking about in terms of the challenges with their offense. And it was interesting because I can't think of the receiver's name, Baltimore receiver that talked about he has to look at this as a wake-up call.
Was it Snead?
Snead, yeah. So Snead really told the truth, right? For that offense to grow, he's got to go back in and he's got to work at being a quarterback and not being an athlete. He's got the athlete part handled, right? But this is now big boy football. This isn't Louisville. This isn't college football anymore. Those guys over there are good and they're getting paid too. And the coaches that are scouting against you and scheming you, they're real good. And so, and it sounds like I'm banging on Lamar, and I'm not. I'm banging on a situation that, you know what? It got Colin Kaepernick out of the league because he never grew past a certain point, right? He was a phenomenon when he came into the league. Remember all the narrative, he was going to change the NFL, all this stuff. Have we heard that before? And who was the coordinator the last time we heard that?
Same guy.
It's Joe Roman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now, and I'm not saying that Lamar's going to end up like Colin did, because there were some other factors involved in it too, but for the Ravens going forward, they can't be that one-dimensional, because that defense went out there and they held the Bills to this is the Bills, right? They were up and down the field against everybody. And their defense played their tails off.
Yeah. The
special teams, which should have been a huge advantage for Baltimore, let them down. When's the last time you saw Tucker miss 2 field goals?
I mean, he's Mr. Automatic. I can't believe that. That was crazy to watch.
Yeah, so they didn't get they roughed the punter at a point where they're still in the game, right? Buffalo's going to punt the ball. But now I know Huntley's in the game and all that stuff, but at least statistically, score-wise, you have a chance to get back in the game. And then you go and rough the punter, right? So now you give the ball back to the Bills. So again, all of these things that you and I are talking about, Jeremy, nobody's talked about in depth the way it needed to be talked about, because you don't have time. But, Baltimore's got issues. They have got to come to terms, in my opinion. They got to come to terms. When you've won 14 games and you don't go to the Super Bowl, and then you come back the next year and win 11 or 10 or whatever they won, and don't get to the championship round, something's missing.
Yeah, I think we can give him a little bit of a pat. Obviously, with COVID, it was very hard to be able, if you're going to try and upgrade your offense and instill new parts of it, it's very hard to do that with all these virtual walkthroughs and not having full OTAs in training camp. I think it'll be interesting to see next year, if they get a full OTAs, full off season, can that offense go up a gear or two? And if it can, perfect, because Lamar becomes pass first. Just to touch quickly on Josh Allen, the team only had 32 rushing yards. Baltimore knew they were probably going to pass it on every down, and I thought Josh Allen I thought he looked pretty good. The numbers don't say he played unreal, but I thought he didn't really put that many feet wrong, and he played a pretty solid football game.
Growth, right? Growth. Where would Josh Allen have been in that same scenario a year ago or 2 years ago?
I think
he'd been running around trying to make a play, throwing it to the Ravens. He did what sometimes quarterbacks have to do, which is protect the ball. His defense was playing extremely well. They played great situational football, Buffalo did. Really, really good situational football. And I'm like you, I'm watching the first half, and I think they ran the ball twice in one half of football, right? But what they did, and to give Dabo credit, Wink Martindale played his big people like he did last week against Tennessee. He had Wolf in the game. He had Calais Campbell in the game. He had all his big guys in there. And he wasn't blitzing, right? He was going to say, okay, show me you can beat me, beat Humphreys, beat my DBs one-on-one. And they struggled. Now, there were a couple plays early in the game that, because of, I think, the wind, Josh missed, he missed Diggs one time on a touchdown. Would have been a touchdown. He was about 4 yards ahead of everybody. So, but again, that's all part of the game, right? So you take into account all those factors, and they say what? Nobody's going to throw the ball well deep tonight because of what? The wind. They missed 3 field goals in the game. Okay, so great awareness by Baltimore, great awareness by Josh Allen, and recognize that the one thing he can't do is put his team at risk, and he did a great job. So that to me is huge growth for a quarterback that in the past would have tried to make a play, a la what we saw in Houston last year when he threw the ball like over his head in the Texans game. And he has grown so much. It's absolutely incredible. I talked to Cole Beasley today. And, I just to say congratulations, he's one game away from being in the Super Bowl and all that stuff. And he said, thanks. He said, but we got to play better. I think Buffalo recognizes they can't go into Green Bay against Aaron Rodgers and beat them, or they can't go into Kansas City against Mahomes and beat them. You're not going to beat an elite quarterback playing the way they play. So I think he recognizes that for them to be champions, they got to play better.
Yeah, I think they really need to get Zach Moss back for this championship game just to try and be able to run the football. But Josh Allen really has matured a lot this year, and he has become that sort of veteran quarterback. But another quarterback I think who's matured a lot this year, and the first half of the season he got a lot of flack, rightly so, he wasn't playing well. He came into this game with the Browns, Baker Mayfield. Everyone talked about the commercials. Everyone talked about the noise. He has this chip on his shoulder. He has to lose it. I think Baker Mayfield really has matured this year. He's become a little bit more of a leader. He's tried to lead by play rather than lead by talk at the mic. I thought yesterday when he threw that pick, he showed great maturation just to go, all right, quarterbacks throw picks. I'm going to throw a pick, but I'm going to come straight back out and I'm going to go boom, 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 and we're going to go right back on the attack. I thought he played a very good game yesterday, and I know a lot of it was against Henny, but what do you think of Baker Mayfield's maturation process in that game, even just alone?
Well, I agree with you. I agree with a lot of what you said. I think that he's really grown, not only in his 3 years. And think about this. When you talk about a quarterback, here's a guy who's had 3 head coaches and 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years in the league. And he's supposed to be the savior of the franchise. Well, Christ, he doesn't even know what the franchise is because it keeps changing on him. When Stefanski came in with his approach, much more even keel, much more, I won't say low key because Stefanski's extremely competitive, but not all over the map like he had previously. Then I think that really helped Baker. And in the last half of the season, Jeremy, what changed for him is there weren't those disaster plays, where he'd scramble around and throw it across the field and guys pick it. He learned how to manage his own personality and his own competitiveness inside the game. And that's hard to do because you think about this, from the time he was a little kid, what was always his greatest strength was those things. His competitiveness, his ability to extend plays, do things other guys couldn't do. And one of the questions I had about him when he was coming out of Oklahoma was how his game was going to transfer to the NFL. Because he would do things at Oklahoma. He had great players around him, right? Like I remember the Texas game. He did some things and you just go, there's no way that kid will get away with that in the NFL. And over these first 3 years in the league, I think he's kind of learned that. And he there were some plays in the game where he got the ball to the right guy that earlier in the year, I'm not sure he'd have made those plays. I'm not sure he'd have made those reads. So Alex Van Pelt, the quarterback coach, Stefanski, Baker, they all deserve credit for his growth as a quarterback.
Yeah, I think with Kevin Stefanski, I think having an adult in the room, like a proper, almost feels like a real guider, or someone to guide Baker, really benefited him this year. And we saw that more, no OTAs or anything like that. I think as the season went on, we start to see all the stuff they were trying to implement come into the offense. Just to touch on the Browns, at the start of the season, I think the problem everyone was saying was, do they have their quarterback? Coming out of this, I think the problem is do they have a cornerback? Because that back end of that defense, it seriously needs a bit of work in this offseason. I thought they were impressive, but there were times there where the Kelsey touchdown, he was matched up with Denzel Ward. That's a bad matchup. Like, they've got to, I think, retool a little bit of that back end of that defense just to try and help Baker and the offense out a little bit.
Well, yeah, and again, that's the same thing and we can talk about this during the offseason if you want to, but when you go into the offseason now, I think it's really important that all the emotion of the season gets washed away, right? And when you sit down and you evaluate your football team, you do it with, like almost a cold-blooded approach to it. Not having personalities, none of that matters, right? And you say, okay, where do we need to get better? Are we good enough at tight end? Yes. Great to see Njoku really make us. I mean, he disappeared for a while, right? Hooper made a play in the game that was an unbelievable play, right? That maybe he's the only tight end who can make. Your offensive line protected you extremely well. You were able to run the football. You got two great backs. Juice Landry is I won't say elite, but he's an upper level inside receiver. I think Peoples-Jones has a chance to grow into being a receiver. Outside, I think they need more speed, but again, they got some guys, right? Defensively is where the issues are. When Myles Garrett went out of the game, they had no pass rush. None. Richardson's a good inside player. The linebackers are their linebackers got exposed in coverage. And they didn't seem like big plays in the game, but Goodson in particular, he can't match up with a back out of backfield. Taki's plays hard. Taki is a backup linebacker in the NFL. He's not an elite linebacker. Then you go to the back end, which they've tried to improve in the draft, but there's still a ways to go. Zendejo is a great kid. He's tough. He can tackle. He can do it. He's not a safety you want to win. He's not Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's none of those guys. So obviously, where they go with free agency, the draft, all that stuff is going to be, I think, like you, predominantly on the defensive side. They need playmakers on defense.
Yeah.
Desperately need playmakers.
Yeah. I think for the Browns this year, I think it's been a good year. I think it's been a step forward in the right direction, and they feel like they're trending upwards for next year. Moving over to the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes' concussion. This is something I find very interesting. Is with rugby, with myself, I've been concussed before, and it's a 4-week protocol as to when you can come back. In the NFL, I believe it's 2 weeks before they say you're completely cleared to play. I'm not convinced Patrick Mahomes is going to be able to come back and play next week. I saw him like you did when he first got up. He had no idea where he was, and that is deeply concerning to watch. This team, if they end up having to put Haney in the game for instead of Mahomes, this team changes very much. So I don't think they can win without Mahomes. I think they need him. If they have him in this team and they go up against the Bills, I still feel very confident in them. But from what you saw from Andy Reid yesterday, did we see some of his absolute coaching genius and blunders in the same game almost once Mahomes went out?
Well, last year when we were doing the Super Bowl game and they were running those same short yardage and red zone plays where they bring Patrick out and run weak side option. I'm sitting there next to Josh Norman and we're talking about the play, right? And both of us agreed that if you're on defense, right, and you see that they put their quarterback in that position, you are going to go after him. You're going to physically cancel the quarterback, right? Now you're not trying to hurt him, but if you put him out there to get hit, you better hit him. And that's what happened. And you can argue that one a ton. Like, that's Andy. He is going to, just like that call with Henny on the short rollout and the little option route to Tyreek, he's going to do that. I mean, think about that. It's 4th and 1. You're at the 50-yard line, right? In a 5-point game. If you go to coaching 101, right, in football coaching class, they're going to say, punt the ball. That's exactly what it's going to say. But he doesn't live by that rule. He lives by what his gut tells him, which is, I've got a fantastic short burst quickness guy, right, against an inside defender who's not used to playing him. I've got a quarterback who's on the roll. We've locked up the front side. If it's not there, he can take it and run with it for 6 inches. And if it's there, all he got to do, it's a pass you and I can still make, right? That's how Andy sees, because Andy looks at it from an offensive point of view, right? Where 90% of other coaches would have said, no way at the 50-yard line do you go out there and go for that thing. So is it genius? It is if it works. Is it a bumble? It is if it exposes your quarterback to getting hit and knocked out of the game. The concussion thing, and I think this is important that the fans know this, Jeremy, because each NFL player goes through a baseline testing before the season starts, right? And what that does is gives any independent neurologist a sense of where they are on the baseline when they're healthy. So this week, he's going to have to prove that he's back to that level, okay? Because they know what a baseline is. They're not going to just be able to, they're not going to ask him, say, how do you feel, Pat? Well, I can go, right? I mean, and it doesn't work that way. And the doctors who will clear him have nothing to do with the Chiefs. They have everything to do with the league, right? So those are independent physicians. Even if he plays, I am sure right now he's in a darkened room, right? Because that's part of how you get your facilities back. He won't be able to practice. You can't read, you can't watch film, you can't do any of that stuff. So that injury changes the entire dimension of this weekend, right? Because I think they showed, and I was one of the ones that said, I'm worried that there may be rust on him when he comes out. There was no rust on him. They looked really sharp from the very start.
Yeah, I've been in concussion protocol before. It isn't fun. I can tell you that much. It isn't fun, and it's a scary place to be if you think you've got a serious injury. But we'll move on then to the final game, and what I thought was great. The History Channel billed it as Battle of the Greats. I thought it showed Drew Brees pretty much, as you were saying, he hasn't got an arm. And I watch Shannon Sharp every week on Fox, and he put up a tweet last night after Jameis Winston threw that touchdown pass, and he said, put Winston in the game and they win this game. And I looked at it and I thought, no, Drew Brees is much better than Jameis Winston. Winston will throw a pick. Drew Brees, it became more and more clear throughout the night. The Bucs were just basically pushing everybody up to the line of scrimmage and just going tight coverage with all the receivers, and Kamara coming out of the backfield, and just went, if you beat us getting those tight windows, fine. But throw it over the top of the head, I dare you. And they just didn't do it.
It's exactly right. Todd Bowles did an amazing job of adjusting during the course of the game, because he played not generic, but he played normal structure against them with what he wants to do, right? The depths of the corners, the depths of the safety. And then, you know what? After they saw he couldn't get the ball down the field vertically. And during the broadcast, I illustrated a play that the corner made falling off inside to go get the ball that he tried to get to Emmanuel. And 2 years ago, that ball's a completion, right? But what everybody could see on television and what obviously the Buccaneer coaches saw was there's no zip on the ball. The ball goes farther than 10 yards. I mean, and it's so incredible to think that when you're skilled, Father Time has never lost, not one time. And Tom Brady's going to find this out too, right? You might think you're Benjamin Button. There ain't no Benjamin Button in pro football. Sometime that, and I think you're starting to see it with him too, but it was incredibly obvious with Breeze last night. And I thought after he threw the interception and then he missed Emmanuel on a ball that almost got picked, you could see in his eyes, like I watched when the camera gets on their faces, I watched their eyes very closely, and he knew it was over. He knew he couldn't come back and win that game. And that's a hard place to be when you've been so great like he's been. It was really, to me, it was emotional on the broadcast to watch and see. And there was one shot where they had Tom, this is like in the last minute of the game. Tom's standing over there and he's got a smile on his face, and you can see the abject pain on Breeze's face. And that you know that one day that's going to change and it'll be Brady with that look on his face. And it's just, you know, we're fans and we love the game and we love the superstars of the game, but there's a time for all of us. And I truly believe that it's Drew's time, and I think he knows it too.
Yeah, it looked like last night on the telecast that towards the end of the game he turned to Jameis Winston and said, "It's your time now, it's your team now." It's hard to make out, but it looked like that's what he said. I mean, he's had an absolutely wonderful career, undoubtedly a Hall of Famer. I can't see him coming back. I think it'd be great in the commentary booth. And just as you said, when he looked back, before he went down the tunnel and looked back, I just saw he's gone, and he knows it now. It's sad to see. But focusing on, then we're going to go on the other side of the guy who just can't get touched by Father Time completely. He's getting tickled by him, but he hasn't been touched by him fully. But Tom Brady just seems to, I can't figure it out. I think he's so smart. He's seen every coverage there is. I had a friend last night on my microphone, and he was going, "Is Tom Brady really like it? Is he exactly as I say?" I'm like, "Look, Tom Brady's been here for 20 years. He's seen every coverage there is. He knows what you're going to do before you do it." And I think it's now 14 championship games in just over a 20-year career. I mean, it's ridiculous. He was impressive last night, but I think they got a lot of help from the Saints. Did you see anything from Brady last night to say he's playing at a very high level, or is it a bit more just the Saint Breeze turning the ball over consistently?
Well, I think that, you know, let's be honest. I mean, he throws a 4-yard slant to Evans for a touchdown. And Evans did a great job of beating Latimer that one down. But anytime he had to push the ball up the field, he missed Gronk. He missed Godwin. He threw a ball in the, maybe it was Ben to Miller, I can't remember who it was to, but he threw one that should have gotten picked for a touchdown, and the DB dropped it. I think that's a really good observation. He's getting tickled by Father Time right now. He can still, I think, get away with it because I don't know of another team left in the tournament that can do what the Saints could do to their receivers. Because you look at that Saints secondary, and they are good, and they can match up, and they can play man. You know, see, this is like the same thing I said to Sean at the end of the game. I'm watching the game, and Bowles recognizes real soon that Breeze is not going to get out of the pocket. He's not going to run. He will not run. And so what's he do? He plays all two-man, right? So you basically got two high players. Everybody else is locked up man-to-man, right? And so you look at the Saints receivers when they lost the little guy.
Scotty Miller? No, Saints.
The Saints, the punt returner. When he got hurt, they have nobody who can win on top because Emmanuel can't anymore. Thomas can't anymore. Cooks can't. I mean, they had nobody that could go high. And you got a quarterback can't. So they just squatted on everything, played man, said, we know Breeze is not going to run for first down. The same thing's true of Brady now, right? The difference is who's left, right? Well, he's got to beat Green Bay. Does Green Bay have enough in the back end to do the same thing? I don't know. Because I don't know what Antonio Brown's status is going to be. There's a lot of questions about all this, but he has a plethora of weapons. What I thought was really good by Tampa Bay, Jeremy, was they took it off Tom's shoulders. You can say it any way you want to say it, but BA recognized on the sidelines and he said, we got to run the ball. He can't win it for us. Fournette can win it for us. And Fournette and Jones in the second half was what turned the tide of the game and the turnovers.
What I think is actually quite interesting is Brady obviously left New England and he went to Tampa Bay for all these weapons. And every time I see a big play from Brady, it's to little Scotty Miller, it's to Cameron Brate, the in some eyes third string tight end, it's to the rookie receiver last night. I sort of looked and I went, he went there for all these weapons and he's elevating the talent of these guys who you wouldn't say are the top guys in the roster by a long stretch. But he's not been able to give Mike Evans Pro Bowl numbers. Same with Godwin. They've come down obviously this year. Is this going to eventually come to a point where he just simply can't take advantage of the big weapons on this offense and it's just going to maybe be a little bit of 50% of what it potentially could be?
Well, I think some of that has to do with what other people do on defense, right? Because if you go against them, if you're the defensive coordinator, who are you going to stop? You're going to say, I'm going to spend energy and personnel to stop Evans, or I'm going to stop Godwin, or I'm going to stop AB, or whoever. I think it depends on who you have. When you have Marshawn Lattimore, you say, okay, Lattimore will take Evans, and let's scheme around the other guys, right? So we'll double it's the old Patriot thing. Who do you double and who do you single, right? So when you get down to the third and fourth guys, who do you got against them? So what's interesting about that is Scotty Miller is really a good player. Now, people don't recognize that. But you look at Scotty Miller's numbers per target, he's a good football player. Cameron Brate would be a number one tight end at about 3/4 of the other NFL teams. And so when the game starts to unfold and you're Byron Leftwich or you're BA or whoever's calling the plays there, and you see what's going on, are you going to continually try and throw the ball at their best DB because you got to get the ball to Mike Evans? Probably not. If you want to win, you're going to say, okay, Scotty Miller's a matchup win for us, or Cameron Brate's a matchup win for us.
Yeah. I mean, just we'll go ahead and preview these games then for this weekend coming. The Bucs up against the Packers. It looks like it's going to be cold. Potential snow. I mean, I really want to see a snow game in these playoffs. It was the one thing I was disappointed with Buffalo and Lambeau. I mean, I don't think Brady will struggle to play in the snow. He's done it his entire career up in New England. It's going to be these other guys that haven't done it. I mean, do you see this really coming down just to Rodgers versus Brady, or it'll be televised, or is this going to be a lot more? I mean, obviously it's going to be more deeper than that. But what's the matchup you really think could decide this game?
Well, first of all, the NFL and the networks that are broadcasting, and Sky is included, what are they gonna try and sell? Right. They're gonna sell the sizzle, right? And what's the sizzle? It's Brady against Rodgers. And I think those guys are critical parts of the thing. But to me, it goes a lot deeper than that. It's, okay, will Tampa lean on what they leaned on from the second quarter on to win the game in New Orleans, which is, we've got a good offensive line. I thought Ryan Jensen was an absolute force in that game. Physically set the tone up front. And, you know, like I said, there's so much about this game that's so beautiful. He almost single-handedly showed the way for that offensive line. I mean, he was nasty. I mean, nasty. And so will they go back against a Packer defense that's going to come out and they're going to play nickel and dime, and they're going to be 4 down, and will they give the ball off to those running backs and let those running backs work? Or will they say, no, this is who we are, we're going to throw it? If they do that, if they think they're going to throw it to win, I think it's going to be really tough for them. Because I don't know if Brady can match Rodgers throw for throw.
Yeah, right? I mean, a lot of people were saying about this Packers team was before the Tennessee and the Rams games that they were a bit more finesse and physical, and that game down in Tampa showed it. But I think what the game against Tennessee in particular, that is a very physical football team, and they came out and just simply I completely out-physicaled them the entire game. They controlled the trenches. I think the Packers have got that ability to get hand in the dirt, so not dirty, but you know, they're willing to get physical with you, and they're willing to go in and arm wrestle. I think this game's going to be really, really tight. I think if the Packers can run the ball with Aaron Jones, as they've been doing it a lot of the year, and asking Rodgers to make 1 or 2 crucial plays, I got them the favourites to win this game. Not by a lot. I think it's going to be a 3-point game, but I do think that they'll come out on top.
Well, I think really where the evolution of that offense from the Mike McCarthy days to what it has become today is that, you know, the Rams came in and said, we are not going to let you beat us throwing the football. And we're going to give you boxes that are so, I mean, there were times, I don't know if you watched the broadcast, but I telestrated it one time. They don't even have a linebacker in the box, not one, right? So the Packers just gouged them with the run. And the Packers have 3 really good backs. It's not just Aaron Jones. In the McCarthy days, that wouldn't have happened. They would have been determined that they were going to throw the ball outside. They're going to go to Gordy, and they were yada, yada, yada. But they really are much, much better now in terms of playing situational football. And so I think that's a huge advantage for them. Now, what Tampa will do, I can't tell you, because they don't have, first of all, they don't have Jalen Ramsey. So who's going to match up with Devontae? If they just play right and left and you know, this is where it'll be really different than what we saw in New Orleans. Rodgers can make all the throws, right? And you better back off a little bit, and you better, you know, and so when you back off, you create throwing lanes. And so I think what we saw the last time these 2 teams played, like Vegas may take that into account, but I'm not taking it into account. I'm saying what I see today, the growth I've seen in that offense, I really think that they're going to be hard to beat at home. I mean, Jeremy, Rodgers said it after the game. Snow, well, yeah, that's a little bit of a problem. Wind, yeah, it can be a problem. Cold, we love it. We want it cold. You go from Tampa up there, and you're standing on that sideline and you're shivering, and you got to go out and play. That's a different animal.
Yeah, I think what people forget as well is that first game was the Packers were beating the Bucs all over the place until Rodgers threw that first pick. Then the game completely changed. But up until that point, they were completely on top of that football game. And it was one mistake that gave the Bucs a chance to get back in the game. But I think you're right. It's the cold that's the killer. Especially if you're maybe down by 10, you're not seeing a lot of the ball like Antonio Brown. He'll get peeved off. Mike Evans will get peeved off. And everything will just go up a little bit of notch. But I'm looking forward to the second game, though. We got the Bills Mafia potentially against Chad Heineken-Heaney. And that to me just sounds like a poster in itself. But look at this one. I mean, the Bills to me are the feel-good story of the year. You know, everyone, it was 1994 is the last time they were in a championship game. You know, it's a feel-good story, and they feel really legit. If Mahomes, we'll pretend a situation, Mahomes is playing. do the Chiefs go on to have a chance to defend their Super Bowl, or are we going to see the Bills Mafia back in the Super Bowl?
Well, now you're. Let me qualify my response with the fact that Cole Beasley's one of my guys. Like, I love that kid, and to know that he's this close to going to the Super Bowl, I'm going to pull for him. I'm going to tell you that right out the gate. Are they good enough to go if Patrick's playing? Yeah, but I think it's going to be really tough. I mean, they're going to have to get some breaks, and they're going to have to really, really play well. If Patrick doesn't play, can they go? Yeah, I think they'll be the favorite now, right? Because their defense is way better than advertised. You know, to think that, and this is not a knock on Henny. He's been an 11-year NFL quarterback. You can't be just a nobody and do that. But compared to what Patrick, and we saw it in the game where Pat moves around in the pocket, and all of a sudden, you know, Kelsey uncovers, and you got a 3rd down and 7 you gain 15 and you get a first down. That's the stuff that he can do. You can do everything right on defense, and those two can create a play that, you know, you just go, what do we got to do, right? So again, like, I would never handicap or bet that game until I knew exactly what was happening, you know, with Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, I always have this feeling in me that a backup quarterback will always at some point show you why they're the backup quarterback. And he threw a pick last night. It was one pick in the end zone. I was like, who is it? I think Kelsey was the target, but he miles overshot him. But just to talk about Cole Beasley, I mean, obviously, this is a player obviously close to your heart. I mean, I started listening to Undisputed and American stuff, a lot of commentary stuff, about 4 or 5 years ago when he was on the Cowboys. And a lot of people used to blame him for the fact that the Cowboys were the anemic offense. It was his run, Zeke run, because guys like him couldn't make plays. And I always thought he got the hard end of the stick. He has went to Buffalo, and he's been an integral part of the offense. A lot of people go to Stephon Diggs because he's got the big numbers and the big plays, and he's the diva receiver. But I truly respect what Cole Beasley's gone up there and done. He maybe went somewhere that wasn't glitz and glamour. You weren't going to get all the headlines. But he is a true professional, and he is an incredible talent in the slot.
You know, it's interesting. Anybody that would ever say that he's a liability doesn't know about football. Excuse my language, but that's how passionate I am about it. But you listen to Tony Romo, listen to Troy Aikman, listen to those guys who know. They know what he brings to that offense. And when it was really interesting because at that point, when he was in that last year with the Cowboys, and it had become evident that they weren't going to pay him, and he wasn't asking for, you know, crazy numbers. He was asking for what the market bore at that position. But they had made a decision that they wanted to move on and go another direction. And so the Bills called me, and actually twice, to do background work on him. And this is why I'm a real big fan of how the Bills have done this deal. They asked me questions, Jeremy, that were like really, really probing. Like, what was he like as a college? I mean, I hadn't coached him in, I think, 6 or 7 years at that time, right? And you know, what was he like as a college? They really did a great background check on him. And then they asked me, you know, when Cole was a rookie, he went out, he got an opportunity to go to the Cowboys as a college free agent. And, you know, he's a skinny little 5'8" white kid playing receiver. So nobody expected anything from him. And then all of a sudden he starts to make some plays, and a media guy asked him in an interview, you know, are you the next Wes Welker? And Cole is not, I mean, he's not going to, when you ask him a question, he said, no, I'm going to be better than Wes Welker, right? And there were a couple veterans at the Cowboys that didn't like that comment. And he went through it was bad. the hazing that went on and all that stuff. So he left camp. He just left, right? Said, I don't need this, and left. Well, Jason Garrett and the coaches knew what he was capable of, and Romo and those guys, and they talked him into coming back. But that was one of the things that the Bills asked me about. You know, does he not love football? Well, you know, and so now I think the Bills have learned, and I'm gonna interview him this week in a one-on-one. We're gonna talk about something that he has brought a lot to their offense. They have a package they call Mustang, and it's named after him because it's stuff that we did at SMU that he said, this will help us. And Brian Dable was good enough and ego-less enough, I guess if that's a word, to listen to what he said, and they put it in, and it's helped their offense tremendously. He tried to do the same thing in Dallas, and he got pushed back. And so finally he just said, no. I mean, the kid grew up 50 miles from Dallas, right? He's from Little Elm, Texas. His dad was a high school coach. I mean, it's crazy to me that you would let that guy go. And, you know, and one of the reasons the Cowboys are where they are, and one of the reasons the Bills are where they are.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that All or Nothing series with Amazon Prime, and I went and did the Cowboys, and you know, at the time I remember Beasley getting a lot of the blame, and I went, nah, he's not the problem in that locker room. There's a culture problem in there, and he's not part of it. He's an exempt professional, and he conducts himself exceptionally well while being an incredible athlete. Just get your take then, Bills Chiefs. Your root. I know you're going to root for the Bills hard, but go with the head. What does the head tell you?
Well, I mean, I'm going to root for the Bills hard in that I have that Cole's on one side, but then I've got another receiver on the other side, Garrett Dieter, that plays for the Chiefs. So I'm going to pull for both those guys. I wish they could both go to the Super Bowl. I think it really is going to come down to whether Mahomes plays.
Yeah.
If Mahomes plays, even if he doesn't practice, I think he's so dynamic that he'll make a play or two in the game to put him over the top. If he doesn't play, then I think the Bills have a real legitimate chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, that's all we got time for this week. Thanks again, Coach, for coming in with us. For you guys, if you want to catch up more with Coach, he does Coffee with Coach every Tuesdays on Periscope, 8 o'clock. Yep. 8 o'clock. So he does that every week. It'll be up on his Twitter. But thanks again, Coach, for coming in and giving us that insight that just, you know, the likes of me and Mitch can't provide.
No, man, it's awesome, and you guys are doing a great job. Keep it up.